想象一下，如果你身边有这样一个孩子，他可能连续4年都稳居班级倒数，每天上课呢只会低头沉默，手里的作业更是能拖就拖。
这种孩子其实在我们现在的教室里非常常见。
对，哪怕是被老师当众点名批评，他也只是就是那种麻木的站在那里，连眼皮都不抬一下。周围的人，包括老师啊、家长，甚至亲戚，给他的标签出奇的一致，肯定都是懒、没上进心，或者说这孩子从小就开始摆烂。
确实，这些标签贴上去太容易了。
但是事实真的有这么简单吗？这就是我们今天这次深入探讨要聊的核心。我们手头有一份极其硬核的资料，是来自一线教育观察者老陈的记录。他深度剖析了一个名叫小雨的真实案例。
老陈的这份观察记录，怎么说呢？看着真的让人脊背发凉。
没错，我们今天的任务就是要完全撕开那些敷衍的表层标签，去直面当下让无数家庭焦头烂额的小学生厌学问题。咱们今天不讲那些理想化的空洞口号，
对，不灌鸡汤，
我们只讲残酷现实下的生存，还有干预法则。其实我们平时面对厌学啊，你知道吧，就像是对着一个正在发高烧的人拼命打鼾，你为什么不降温呢？却根本不去查他到底是哪里感染了。
这个比喻太精准了。面对所谓的厌学，大人们太容易陷入一种惯性误区，觉得解决这种问题的第一步是去想明天怎么管教他，能让他好好写作业。
但其实根本不是这样，对吧？
完全不是。第一步绝对是认清现实。小雨身上展现出的绝不是一时闹情绪，更不是单纯的性格缺陷，这就是数年负面经历堆积成的一种顽疾。
所以在咱们试图解决问题之前，必须得先看清小雨到底经历了什么。为什么单纯的严格管教不仅没用，反而会把这孩子推向深渊？老陈资料里提到了一个分层观察法，这个特别有意思。
对，当我们看小雨的时候，绝不能只看表面。老陈把小雨的状态直接拆解成了3个层次。表层吧，就是家长和老师天天盯着的那些，
就是逃避啊、抵抗啊、不写作业这些。
没错，还有上课走神。但这只是冰山一角。如果我们往下看，到的中层，老陈发现小雨的内心其实早就充满了长期的否定带来的那种羞耻感，还有恐惧感。
恐惧感就是害怕被骂。
对，因为每天都在被骂，他的心理防御机制就自动开启了，衍生出了一种情感麻木。这就是为什么老师骂他，他连眼皮都不抬。
也就是说，他根本不是不在乎，而是因为太痛了，大脑直接把痛觉神经给切断了。
确实是这样，而且资料里揭示的最深层认知，真的让人特别无奈。在最深层，像小雨这样的孩子，他早就固化了一种信念，他觉得自己天生不行，走到哪儿都会被看不起。
哇，这就解释了为什么别人偶尔去鼓励他一下，或者批评他，都像打在棉花上，因为他的底层操作系统已经认定自己是个废品了。
没错，如果我们把这种底层认知的固化放到时间轴上去看，就会发现它完全是源于一个不断循环的压力链条。
这个链条是怎么形成的？
老陈详细复盘了小雨的这4年。其实从1年级刚入学的时候，他仅仅是因为拼音学得慢了一点儿，偶尔跟不上进度，导致被老师批评。
然后呢？
然后他就带着挫败感和没写完的作业回到家，结果又被焦急的父母责骂到半夜。第2天，他精神萎靡地回到学校，成绩依然不好，慢慢的就成了同学们跟风取笑的对象。
这真的是一个让人窒息的死循环了。而且在这个链条里，时间越长，死结打了就越紧。
是的，一环扣一环。
我看老陈在资料里提到，面对小雨这种已经彻底封闭的孩子，我们唯一的抓手是去寻找他身上哪怕极其微弱的闪光点。
对，必须要找。比如老陈观察到，小雨虽然在数学课上已经完全放弃了，但是他愿意花2个小时，安安静静地把班级图书角的书按照大小和颜色摆放得整整齐齐。
还有对路边流浪猫的那种耐心。老陈说，这种微小的自我认同是我们唯一的绳索。不过，我听的是挺受触动的，但咱们得现实一点来讨论。
你说，
如果我们花这么大的精力去深度理解它，在很多旁观者，比如七大姑八大姨，甚至班主任看来，这难道不是在给孩子的坏习惯找借口吗？
这个问题非常犀利。
对吧？很多人肯定会觉得，你这不就是纵容一个懒汉吗？直接严格管教，打一顿饿一顿，不是更能立竿见影吗？
这其实就是干预过程中阻力最大的一环。我们的大环境总是追求效率，但这恰恰是我们今天必须要纠正的致命误区。
怎么说？
那种流于表面的评判，往往是压垮孩子的最后一根稻草。你想想，小雨这样已经被整个世界否定了整整4年的孩子，你再给他贴上一个屡教不改的标签，再施加暴力，
他只会觉得，果然所有人都在针对我。
对，他会觉得我就是个烂人，从而彻底放弃所有的生机，破罐子破摔。所以，深度理解的最大现实意义，并不是为了纵容，
那是为了什么？
是为了帮我们大人认清干预的真实难度。它能让我们放下那些不切实际的期待，给孩子留出一个避免他彻底精神崩溃的喘息空间。
我懂了。如果不理解他的痛苦，那所谓的管教其实就是一种高压迫害。那既然这样，到了下周一早上，作为家长或者教育者，我们到底该落实哪些具体的行动？
行动的首要原则，也是最反直觉的一点，降低期待。
降低期待。
对，而且是断崖式地降低。你必须在心里接受一个残酷的现实，就是短期内这孩子的成绩不可能提升，他的自卑感也绝对不会立刻消失。
也就是说，不能抱有那种用了几天方法，孩子下个月就能考及格的幻想。
绝对不能。如果你有这种幻想，那你很快就会因为失望再次对孩子发火，之前的努力瞬间清零。资料里老陈给小雨父母开出的处方叫做最小成本策略。
这个词儿听起来很务实，具体怎么做呢？
既然小雨现在的认知能力和情绪状态就是跟不上，那就果断放弃追赶进度这个执念，只保留最基础的学习内容。
哇，这对于现在焦虑的家长来说非常颠覆啊！但这其实是为了停止他每天都在经历的挫败感体验，对吧？
没错，我们每天都逼着他去解那些他根本看不懂的数学题，那学习对他来说就等同于每天一次的公开处刑。
太残忍了。所以停止伤害绝对是第一步。我看到资料里，老陈让小雨的父母直接停掉了所有的课外辅导班和把高题，只要求他什么？只要求他把字写清楚。
就是这么基础。紧接着就是要守住大人的底线，并且学会有效赞美，这需要大人极强的自控力。
比如辅导决系的时候，绝对不准骂人。
对，绝对不准骂人，而且绝对不准翻旧账。如果你今天情绪不好做不到，那宁可今天不辅导，让他去睡觉。
这点太难了。那赞美呢？不能说你真棒吗？
不能，要避免那些空洞的“你很棒”“你最聪明了”那些假大空的话，对小雨这种内心极其敏感、自卑的孩子来说，听起来就是在讽刺他。
那应该怎么说？
只能肯定具体的行为，比如我注意到你今天坚持写完了2行字，而且橡皮擦完没有把纸弄破，这就是有效赞美。
或者说，你今天把水杯洗得很干净，
这才是他们能听懂并接受的反馈。而且资料里强调，这种干预的时间刻度是极其漫长的，是以年为单位的。
这是最考验人的地方。绝大多数干预所以失败，就是因为大人熬不住这个时间长度。老陈把这个过程分为了2个阶段。
哪2个阶段？
第一阶段，也就是初中的1到3个月，被称为维稳期。这个阶段的目标极其卑微，仅仅是停止恶化。只要小雨不去自残，没有彻底逃学旷课，就算他每天去学校只是发呆，这都算是阶段性的胜利。
要熬1到3个月，仅仅为了维稳。那第2阶段呢？
等到半年到1年之后，才可能进入第2阶段的微调期。在这个阶段，每周只能改动一个极其微小的细节，比如这周的目标仅仅是妈妈在辅导作业时少叹1次气。
少叹1次气都要观察2周。
对，如果孩子状态稳定，再进行下一步。这里有一条必须死守的红线。
是什么？
当孩子的状态稍微有一点点缓和的时候，大人绝对不能立刻提高要求。
这让我想到了资料里那个极具洞察力的比喻，这就像是一只受了惊吓的小乌龟，它在壳里躲了很久，好不容易试探性的把头探出来一点点，
这个时候，如果你心里一喜，立刻伸手去抓它，
它会彻底缩回去的。
对，甚至你还想把它拽出来去跑拉力赛，它会感受到极大的恐惧。他会觉得你之前所有的善意、所有的温柔，全都是为了骗得出来设置的陷阱。
这个乌龟的比喻其实完美解释了生理学层面正在发生的事情。这不是他在装病，这是真实的生理反应。
真实的生理反应。
对，他们的大脑杏仁核长期处于高度警觉状态，一旦你突然增加压力，他们的身体会立刻分泌大量皮质醇，触发战斗或逃跑的应急反应。
哇，所以这种长期的神经紧绷会导致实打实的躯体化症状，比如头疼啊、肚子疼啊。
没错，一旦出现这些信号，就是一个强烈的警报，大人必须马上停步，退回到上一个阶段。慢就是快，按兵不动本身就是一种保护。
但这里有个绕不开的现实问题。刚才咱们聊的这些最少成本啊、维稳期啊，都需要家长的绝对克制。可是如果环境本身就是有毒的呢？
这是非常现实的困境。
对啊，如果老陈走了，小雨的父母还是控制不住暴脾气，或者班级里起哄嘲笑的同学依然存在，难道这孩子就真的只能被这股漩涡吞噬了吗？
我们确实需要打破一种理想化的幻想。在现实中，想要彻底给孩子打造一个无菌的真空环境是完全不可能的。
那怎么办？就看着他受伤害吗？
老陈提出的方案是在能力范围内进行分层防御。
分层防御，这听起来有点像是在战场上修工事了。第一层防御是什么？
第一层防御必须死守底线，去拦住那些急性伤害。
急性伤害是指，
比如高强度的当众辱骂、聚众取笑，甚至是人身攻击，这些是绝对不能容忍的。不管谁是施暴者，大人必须站出来制止。
这是一定要挡住的明枪。那第二层防御呢？
第二层防御是去缓冲那些慢性伤害，比如改不掉的冷眼呐、随口的比比呀。对于这些，给孩子提供物理上的隔离。
物理隔离，比如在家里怎么做？
既然父母有时候也控制不住嘴，那就给小雨在阳台弄一个独立安静的小桌子，只要他坐在那里，大人就不去打扰。
那在学校里呢？
在学校里，教他下课后去操场沿边或者图书角，远离那些爱嘲笑人的小圈子。更重要的是给他提供一个情绪的树洞。
可是这触及到了一个很痛的情感点，我们要怎么跟孩子交代？如果我们承认改变不了环境，这算不算一种无奈的妥协？如果我们就这么向孩子坦白，会不会让他觉得连我们都放弃了他？
永远不要低估孩子的感知力，千万不要给孩子虚假的承诺。如果你告诉他别怕，老师明天就不会这样对你了，但第二天一切照旧，小雨就会彻底对你失去信任。
他会觉得世界上的大人都是骗子。
对，所以相反，你要如实的告诉他真相。
直接跟一个8、9岁的孩子说，现在的环境很糟糕，我们无能为力，这太残酷了吧？
是残酷，但你要把重点放在陪伴上。你可以这么说，现在的环境确实让人很不舒服，我们也确实没有办法帮你解决所有的麻烦，但是我们会一直陪着你，陪你一起熬过这段艰难的日子，帮你少受一点伤。
哇，这种坦诚反而能建立起最坚实的信任，因为他知道你是那个愿意和他一起坐在泥潭里，并且不对他撒谎的人。
没错。
可是陪你熬过去，如果连大人都有局限性，那最终这就变成了一个求生的问题，因为我们不可能永远做孩子的挡箭牌。一个8、9岁的小学生，他该怎么在这种交叉火力中存活下来？这就需要交给他们战术层面的自救了。
对，这里的关键是必须摒弃那些成人视角的鸡汤。你告诉一个在高压下惊慌失措的孩子，你要深呼吸，你要调整心态，这完全是无效的废话。
逼迫低龄孩子独自去硬扛而已，根本不切实际。所以老陈怎么重新定义自救的？
他把自救也分了层。第一层门槛最低，叫做行为自保，就是教孩子怎么不激化矛盾。
比如挨骂的时候不顶嘴。
对，挨骂时不顶嘴， 被嘲笑时无视并且离开。如果听不懂课，也不要焦虑自责，坦然接受自己听不懂，先保命，减少正面冲突。
那第二层呢？
第二层是情绪缓冲，靠运动、倾诉去释放，慢慢向孩子渗透一个观念：别人的看法不代表全部事实，但不强求他立刻认同。
那然后就是最核心的第三层，帮孩子守住认知底线。这个听起来有点抽象，我们怎么教一个9岁的孩子去守住认知底线？
老陈的方法非常落地，他建议每天晚上睡前和小雨进行一次极简的复盘。
怎么复盘？
比如问他，今天老师说你脑子笨，咱们想想，这是因为你真的一无是处，还是因为老师今天情绪失控脱口而出？这其实是在帮孩子进行认知解绑。
把大人糟糕的情绪和自己的价值分离开来。父母得反复告诉他，成绩的好坏不能定义你整个人，你依然拥有被尊重的权利。
是的，
听明白了，我们现在根本不是在教孩子苦练武功去反击，我们只是在悄悄塞给他一面盾牌，教他怎么在冰雹里护住自己的头。那只要头没破，这场冰雹总有停的一天。资料里对这种自救成功的标准是怎么定义的？
标准其实非常低，但也非常了不起。不要求孩子变得多么乐观强将，只要他不自我否定、不自我伤害，能维持正常生活，这就已经是了不起的自救成功了。
今天的探讨真的让人五味杂陈。面对常年积累的厌学困境，敬畏现实，降低期待，守住底线，这远远比那些空谈的方法论更有力量。我们的目标从来不是把落后的孩子变成优等生，
对，而是阻止现状恶化，最大限度减少伤害。
无论此刻正在收听的你，是正处于焦虑中的家长，还是试图帮助学生的老师，希望今天的探讨能帮你卸下沉重的完美干预包袱，看见孩子真实的求救信号。
没错，这才是真正的开始。
最后，我想留下一个可能有些刺耳，但值得你去咀嚼的思考。在这个所有人都要求孩子必须不断进步、不断冲刺的时代里，当你为了保护一个伤痕累累的孩子，选择让他停在原地时，这种看似不作为的不作为，会不会恰恰是我们今天最稀缺、最深刻的教育？感谢收听我们今天的深入探讨，我们下次再见。
如果我今天告诉你啊，对一个在学习上严重受挫，甚至已经放弃自己的孩子，你跟他说你其实很棒，我相信你一定可以做到，这个举动不但没有用，还可能是你对他做过最毒的一件事，你大概会觉得我疯了吧？
其实真的很多人会觉得不可思议，因为这完全颠覆了我们平常说的那个爱的教育嘛。
对啊，但今天我们就是要来颠覆这个直觉。无论你今天是家长、教育工作者，或者只是单纯对人类心理学感兴趣，你一定见过那种就是坐在书桌前，然后眼神很空洞，对着作业发呆的孩子。
没错，就是那种你怎么劝或者是大发雷霆，他都无动于衷，像是一滩死水的状态。
对对对，我们看到这种情况，脑海里第一个直觉通常是：这孩子怎么这么懒？或者说他天生就没有上进心。贴标签真的很简单啦，但今天这场深度探讨，我们得把这些标签狠狠地撕下来。
真的必须撕下来，因为当我们轻易地说孩子懒的时候，我们其实是掩盖了这背后一个极度复杂而且非常残酷的心理机制。我们这次看了一份非常震撼的儿童心理学观察记录，重点完全集焦在一个让无数家庭崩溃的问题，就是小学生厌学。
小学生厌学真的是现在超级普遍的痛点。
对，这份资料里面有一个很典型的真实案例，是一个叫小雨的4年级小男生。
好，我们来拆解一下这个问题。我们先别急着找什么神奇的快速提分法，我们先试着走进小雨的世界。你可以想象一下他的日常哦，从1年级开始，他的大脑就跟不上学校的进度，然后整整4年，他几乎都是班上垫底的。
没错，这不是1天2天的事。
在学校还要面对老师那种无奈的叹气，甚至是被全班点名批评。然后下课，同学可能还会调侃他、排挤他。好不容易熬到放学回家，等着他的又是爸妈看着那个满江红的考卷，在那边恨铁不成钢的怒吼。这样4年下来，日复一日，这根本已经不是单纯的不爱读书了吧？
完全不是。这其实是一个非常严重的心理创伤累积过程。要真正看懂像小雨这样的孩子，我们必须先打破那个厌学只是孩子一时在闹情绪的迷思。心理学家在分析这种个案的时候，通常会带我们分3个层次看。
哦，哪3个层次？
最表层当然就是我们大人最头痛的行为嘛，就是他逃避学习、对抗大人，然后作业乱写，或是干脆直接不写。
就是我们常说的摆烂呐。但这只是冰山一角，对吧？
没错，这只是最终呈现出来的结果。如果我们只针对这个表层去处罚他，就像是看到一个人发烧，你只是一直拿冰块去敷他的额头，
却不去管他体内已经发炎感染的器官。哇，这个比喻很精准呢。
对，所以我们往下探究，中层其实是他们的情绪状态，那是一个充满羞耻感、恐惧，最终自我防御机制全面启动，然后转化为麻木的地带。
等一下，麻木，所以他们不是真的无所谓，而是
他们不敢再有感觉了。因为长期的被否定，这些孩子的大脑其实长期处在战斗或逃跑的压力反应中。当大脑的杏仁核过度活跃的时候，负责理性思考和学习的前额叶是没办法正常运作的。
天哪，这已经是大脑生理机制的层面了。为了不让自己每天都很痛苦，大脑干脆直接关机。
对，这就是大脑的自我保护。那最深层也是最难撼动的，就是他们固化的核心认知。
核心认知是指什么？
经过几年的打击，小雨心里已经深信一个铁律，就是我天生就是个笨蛋，我什么都做不好，我走到哪里都会被看不起。
哇，这听起来真的让人很心疼哎。当一个10岁的孩子带着这种认知在生活的时候，你怎么可能期待他对一张数学考卷有什么热情？
是啊，根本不可能。
不过等一下，让我从一般大众，特别是我们亚洲社会很常见的视角来挑战一下这个观点。我懂这听起来很惨，但如果我们只是去理解他，一直说他好可怜，他大脑杏仁核被挟持了，这会不会变成一种变相的溺爱啊？
很多家长真的会有这个疑虑。
对啊。这听起来就像是一场很残酷的压力骨牌效应嘛。从1年级听不懂，推倒了老师批评的骨牌，接着推倒家长责骂的骨牌，最后同学排挤的骨牌也倒了。骨牌越倒越多，难道因为这样我们就只能眼睁睁看着他在这个循环里彻底放弃吗？我们是不是在帮他找借口？
这个压力骨牌效应形容得太好了，但其实理解的本质绝对不是溺爱，也不是找借口。理解是为了帮助我们大人认清干预的难度跟物理的边界。
认清边界，意思是有些事我们就是做不到。
我会说，我们必须停止去做那些你以为有效，但其实在加速骨牌倒塌的事情。如果我们只盯着表面的成绩，问题一定会反复发作。深度理解小雨是为了让我们大人放下那些不切实际的期待，
所以就是不要再逼他了。
没错，当你明白这个孩子的防备心有多重，他的大脑有多疲惫，你就会知道无效的逼迫只会增加双方的内耗。大人必须先踩刹车，孩子才会有一点点喘息的空间。这是不让他们心理防线彻底崩溃的底线。
所以理解其实是为了止损啦。好，那我们现在停止责骂了。这时候很多家长就会想，既然不能骂，那我换一招，我用爱的教育总可以了吧？我开始疯狂鼓励他，跟他说你很棒啊，妈妈相信你一定可以及格的。
这就是最危险的地方了。
最有趣或者说最颠覆认知的地方来了。资料里告诉我们，对于这种严重厌学的孩子，常规的鼓励反而会变成毒药。为什么会这样啊？
这个真的非常违反直觉。但是我们回到小雨的心理状态去想，对于一个长期活在负面评价里、自我价值感极低，而且对大人充满防备的孩子来说，你跟他说你很棒，你其实很聪明，他听在耳里是什么感觉？
他会觉得你在骗他。
对，他会觉得你根本不懂我有多糟，你只是在敷衍我，或者你是不是又有什么目的，想套路我，逼我念书？这种不真诚的赞美反而会引发他强烈的警惕。
这其实超像我们在职场上遇到的状况。 如果你明明把一个专案搞砸了，然后你的老板还跑来拍拍你的肩膀说你是全公司最优秀的员工，你心里绝对会发毛吧？觉得他是不是想挖坑给我跳？
对对对，这比喻超贴切。而且在干预的过程中，有一条绝对不能踩的红线，
什么红线？
那就是当孩子的状态稍微有一点点好转的时候，大人绝对不要立刻提高要求。
哇，这超难忍住的吧？如果我在家看到孩子今天居然主动拿起笔写作业了，我当然会想趁热打铁啊！我一定会说，你看你做得到吗？我们今天多写2页好不好？这完全是人之常情啊！
这就是最容易弄巧成拙的陷阱。你想象一下，孩子今天好不容易克服了巨大的恐惧，鼓起勇气坚持写完了2行字，结果你明天马上打蛇随棍上，把标准拉高到1整页。
他会觉得自己上当了。
没错，他会发现，只要我表现出一点点进步，大人的贪婪就会无限膨胀。他会认定你所有的善意跟鼓励，都只是为了骗我读书而已。
天哪，这瞬间就会摧毁你们之间那如履薄冰的信任呢！
真的，下一次为了保护自己不再掉进这个无底洞，他的防备心会变得更重，连那2行字他都不愿意写了。
这完全是在考验大人的克制力啊！那既然空洞的鼓励没用，又不能随便提高标准，我们到底该怎么做？总得拉他一把吧。
实务上最有效的策略其实是采用最小成本原则。
最小成本原则
就是全面降低所有人的期待。如果孩子的能力已经落后太多了，那就果断放弃追赶学校的进度，把标准降到最低，只保留最基础的内容就好。不要让他每天一睁开眼就活在那种我什么都不会的挫败感里面。
但老实说，在台湾要家长完全放下成绩期待，这听起来很像天方夜谭呢。社会竞争那么激烈，家长一定会超焦虑说，现在放过他，他以后的人生怎么办？
我完全可以理解这种焦虑，这真的是家长最难跨过去的坎。但残酷的现实是，你现在如果不放过他，他连现在都撑不过去了，更别提以后。
也是，
把门槛降到他伸手就能摸到的地方，是为了让他重新体验到微小的成功。而且我们在给予肯定的时候，要舍弃那种空洞的赞美，改为肯定具体的事实。
具体的事实，比如呢？
比如说，与其跟他说你好棒，不如跟他说我注意到你今天遇到不会的题目时，没有立刻发脾气，而是坚持把旁边那题简单的算完了，这非常不容易。
就是只描述客观事实，不带任何虚假的滤镜，这听起来合理多了。但我也感觉到这需要极大的耐心。很多大人会有一种急于求成的心态，觉得我今天带你去看心理咨商了，你下个礼拜就应该要有180度的转变呐。
针对这种期待，心理学家有一个非常写实的形容。他说：“厚冰冻了4年，你怎么能指望它几个月就能融化？”
哇，厚冰冻了4年，这句话真的很有画面。
面对这种神经回路已经固化、积重难返的局面，我们必须把心态转为长期抗战。这不是几周的速成班，这是一个以年为单位的漫长破冰之旅。
等等，以年为单位，这对习惯追求效率的大人来说太残酷了吧？那这漫长的1-2年，具体的时间轴到底要怎么规划？
整个过程大致分为2个阶段。第一阶段叫做维稳期，这至少要持续1到3个月。在这几个月里，大人什么新要求都不准提，
都不准提。
不补课，不说教，也不催促。大人的目标只有一个，就是守住能正常出门上学、完成最低限度任务的这个底线就好了。
等于这3个月，大人要在旁边活生生的把自己的焦虑吞下去，看着他成绩烂在那边哦。
对，必须忍住。为什么这3个月这么重要？因为孩子的神经系统需要足够长的时间，在一个绝对安全的环境里，才能真正确认老虎已经走了，威胁不存在了。
他才会放下戒心。
没错，只要这几个月内孩子激烈对抗或逃学的频率没有增加，维稳期就算成功了。情绪一旦稳定，大脑才可能重启学习功能。这时候我们才进入第2阶段，也就是微调期。
微调期听起来就是技术活了耶。
是的，这个周期更长，是以半年到1年为单位的。在微调期，每一次只能改动一个极小的细节。
有多小？
比如说，家长这周试着在看功课的时候少发一次脾气，或者老师下周试着让小雨多做一道最简单的加法题。重点是，每一次微调都必须观察2周以上，确认孩子的反应。
我的天呐，这简直就是像在拆除一颗已经倒数计时的复杂炸弹呐！动作必须极其精细，前进一步，只要发现孩子眉头一皱，有反弹的迹象，就得立刻把手缩回来，退后一步，绝对不能硬扛着往前冲。
没错，这个比喻太生动了。这就是为什么在处理这类成年问题时，临床的指导原则往往是慢就是快，不动就是保护。我们的目标从来就不是要在这1年内让他逆袭成为优等生，那是电影情节啦。
对，现实没那么美好。
现实的目标是阻止情况持续恶化，只要骨牌不再往下倒，其实这条曲线就已经在往上走了。
阻止恶化本身就是一种胜利了。不过我们刚刚讨论的这一切，其实都有一个很完美的前提，就是大人愿意配合改变。
是的，
但如果我们把这个拉高到一个比较宏观的视角来看的话，现实中有些家长的脾气就是改不了，或者学校老师还是带有偏见，同学的霸凌也无法立刻停止。当大环境的伤害根本无法阻断的时候，我们还能做什么？我们总不能双手一摊说环境太糟了，我也救不了你吧？
这确实是实务工作中最让人无力却又必须面对的现实。如果大人不愿改变，没人能替孩子完全隔绝这些伤害。所以当环境无法改变时，我们只能转向教导孩子分层次来进行保护。
具体要怎么分层？
第一层，我们必须死守拦截急性伤害，像是当众的辱骂、肢体冲突或是聚众霸凌，这种会造成急性创伤的冲击。我们就算无法改变大人的观念，也必须在行为上强硬介入制止。
这是保护他最后的安全感。那如果是日常那种很难抓到把柄的冷暴力或是酸言酸语呢？
那就进入第2层，缓冲慢性伤害。对于这些改不掉的日常冷眼，我们能做的就是给孩子搭建一个情绪的避风港，当一个他愿意倾诉、绝对不会评判他的树洞。
让他有地方可以发泄。
同时在物理空间上做简单的隔离，比如引导他下课时去图书馆，远离那些爱取笑人的小圈子，不要强迫他非得融入充满敌意的集体。
但这推演下来，我们遇到一个最核心的难题耶。我们不可能24小时跟着孩子保护他嘛，所以很多自助书会说要教小学生自我调节。但我真的觉得要一个10岁的国小生，在被老师痛骂、被同学取笑的时候，还要他在心里深呼吸、正向思考，这太反人性了吧？他的大脑在那刻早就宕机了。
你点出了一个非常致命的盲点。传统教的那靠深呼吸、转念思考，在极度高压的瞬间，别说小孩了，连大人都做不到。
真的做不到啊！
所以我们必须重新定义对这些孩子的期望，不要教他们如何变得无坚不摧的自救，而是教他们最务实的自保。
自保，这听起来有种战场生存法则的感觉。具体要怎么保？
自保可以拆解成3个层级，最基础也最优先的是行为自保。你要告诉孩子，面对不讲理的大人严厉批评时，不顶嘴，不辩解，用沉默来应对。
等等，这不会很憋屈呢？
这不是认输，这是为了不激怒对方，降低矛盾升级的风险。面对同学的无聊取笑也是，不要对骂，直接无视，转身离开。起哄的人觉得没趣，自然会减少攻击。
也就是说，先求不吃眼前亏，把物理伤害降到最低。那心理受的伤呢？憋久了会生病吧？
这就是第2层的情绪缓冲了。我们要明确告诉孩子，受了委屈、觉得难过、愤怒都是正常的，教他们去打球、去跑步、去画画，把情绪能量释放出来。同时，大人要在平时反复渗透一个观念。
什么观念？
就是告诉他，别人嘴里说出来的你，不代表全部的事实。我们不奢求他当下能释怀，但这句话会像一颗种子，在他情绪平复后发挥作用。
哇，这就像是在他的心智里建立到防火墙哎。
没错，而最后也是最深、最重要的一道防线是认知底线。
我们要确保孩子牢牢记住一个核心价值：成绩好坏只代表你在读书这件事上的表现，它绝对不能定义你整个人。哪怕你现在什么都做不好，你依然是一个人，依然拥有被尊重的权利。
所以这一切到底代表什么？今天我们跟着小雨的案例，走进了厌学孩子那个冰冷的世界，拆解了这条看不见的压力骨牌。我们发现，面对这种日积月累的困境，那些花俏的教育方法、空洞的激励口号，真的是全都不堪一击。
对，完全没用。
真正有力量的是敬畏现实的残酷，果断降低期待，然后守住底线。我们能为这些孩子做的终极意义，其实就是3件事嘛：阻止情况恶化，减少环境伤害，还有守住他作为一个人的基本尊严跟认知底线。
完全没错，这其实已经超越了单纯的教育技巧了。这些孩子的故事像是一面很锐利的镜子，照出了整个成人世界，甚至整个社会体制的焦虑和盲点。
真的，在我们今天这场讨论的尾声，我想把一个或许有点刺耳，但非常值得思考的问题留给你。我们一直以来都很习惯把厌学看作是这个孩子出了问题，觉得他像一台坏掉的机器，需要被修理。
这是一般的成见。
但是，当你深入了解像小雨这样的孩子，你会发现，为了一个不断用单一标准否定他，每天都在丈量他价值的体制，他不得不启动大脑的防御机制，切断自己的感受，麻木自己，只是为了能勉强活下去。你会不会觉得，也许真正生病的，从来都不是这些孩子？
这是一个很沉重的反思。
会不会真正生病的是那个把成绩单上的数字看得比一个活生生完整的人还要重要的系统？下次当你看到一个仿佛放弃自己的孩子时，试着先不要看他的成绩单，去看看他背后那条紧紧勒住他隐形的压力链条。感谢你今天参与我们这一次的深度探讨，希望这次的内容能让你在未来用全新的视角去看待身边那些正在挣扎的孩子，或者是那个曾经在压力中独自挣扎的你自己。
I want you to picture a child right now. Let's call him Xiaoyu.
Okay, yeah, Xiaoyu.
So he is 8 years old, right? And he's sitting in this brightly lit primary school classroom. But from day one, literally the very first day of first grade, he has been at the absolute bottom of his class.
Wow, day one.
Yeah, day one. For 4 straight years, every single day, he is just, the slowest to grasp the material. And when he goes home, he is constantly criticized for not trying hard enough.
Right, the pressure starts piling up at home.
Exactly. And then at school, he's publicly called out by teachers for dragging the class average down. Out on the playground, he's mocked by his peers.
It's just relentless.
Relentless is the perfect word. Now, after 4 years of this drumbeat of failure, he doesn't cry anymore. He doesn't throw tantrums. He just puts his head down on his desk. He avoids work entirely.
He just shuts down.
Yeah, he is completely, terrifyingly silent.
And that silence, I mean, it is a total systemic shutdown. He is completely retreated from an environment that causes him, nothing but pain.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive, because we are unpacking the absolute frontier of child psychology as we understand it now in 2026.
Right. And unfortunately, Xiaoyu's story is really becoming the defining educational crisis of our time.
It really is. If you're a parent or an educator or just someone who cares about the next generation, you've likely noticed this alarming trend.
Oh, it's impossible to ignore at this point.
It is. We are looking at the...
Exactly. Primary schoolers reporting feelings of being, hollow, chronically anxious, and entirely burned out.
That's terrifying. I mean, these are symptoms we traditionally reserve for, stressed out high schoolers facing college entrance exams or adults going through a midlife crisis.
Right. Seeing an 8-year-old exhibit the burnout of a 40-year-old middle manager it's just heartbreaking.
It really is. And to understand how to actually help these kids, we are relying on a fascinating set of source materials today.
We have some incredibly grounded material to work with.
Yeah, we're going to be exploring this highly realistic frontline framework used by education observers in 2026.
And this material is anchored by the extensive field notes of a veteran observer named Old Chen.
Right, Old Chen. And it centers heavily on the case study of that boy I just mentioned, Xiaoyu. So this isn't, it isn't ivory tower theory.
No, not at all. We're looking at boots on the ground, dirt under the fingernails observations of what is actually happening at kitchen tables and in classrooms.
Which is exactly what we need. Because the beauty of old Chen's framework is that it forces a complete paradigm shift.
That absolutely does. We are moving entirely past the superficial, fix the problem mentality.
The old 20th century way.
Right. The old way was like, the kid isn't doing homework, so let's figure out a system of stickers, rewards, or punishments to force compliance.
Basically bribing or threatening them.
Exactly. But this 2026 approach is a deeply realistic, often highly uncomfortable, but ultimately much more hopeful paradigm.
How so? Like, what does it actually ask of us?
It asks us to figure out how to actually understand and protect a child who has fundamentally given up on the very concept of school, and by extension themselves.
Man, giving up on themselves. I want to start by dissecting what we are actually looking at when a kid puts their head on the desk.
Let's do it, because it's so easy to misinterpret.
It really is. Because
Yeah.
if you are that exhausted parent or, that overworked teacher trying to manage 30 other kids, it is incredibly easy to look at Xiao Yu and just slap a label on him.
Oh, the labels come out instantly.
Right. You say, he's lazy, he has no drive, he's just unmotivated. But I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Why shouldn't we use those labels? I mean, if a kid isn't doing the work, isn't that the literal definition of lazy? What are we missing when we fall back on that instinct?
That's a super common reaction.
Yeah.
But slapping the lazy label on a child is actually, it's a psychological defense mechanism for the adult.
Wait, really? For the adult?
Yeah, think about it. If you define the child as simply lazy, then the solution is obvious, right? More discipline.
Oh, I see. It makes it a simple behavioral issue.
Exactly. Furthermore, it places the fault entirely within the child's moral character. It completely absolves the environment, the teaching methods, and the parenting of any responsibility.
That is a harsh truth, so it's easier for us to just say they're lazy.
Right. But Old Chen's framework insists on what they call a layered observation method. When you just see lazy, you are looking at a two-dimensional photograph of a deeply complex, three-dimensional psychological architecture.
Okay, so we need to look at the cross-section. The sources are very specific about these layers. Let's start at the top. What is the adult actually seeing?
So the framework divides the child state into three distinct layers. The top layer is the surface layer.
The surface layer.
This is the visible escape, the silent opposition. It's the missing homework, the refusal to answer questions, staring out the window, or physically putting the head down.
So just the raw behaviors.
Right. And to the untrained eye, it looks like defiance. It looks like a character flaw.
It looks like they just don't care, but the source material pushes us to peel that back, right? To look deeper.
When you peel back the surface layer, you enter the middle layer. This is the realm of hidden emotions.
And this is where it gets complicated.
Very.
Yeah.
This is where the biological reality of trauma comes into play. Underneath that mask of apathy is this boiling cauldron of shame, profound fear, and eventually emotional numbness.
Emotional numbness, that's a big one.
It is. Old Chen notes something crucial about Xiao Yu here. His silence isn't a lack of caring. Prolonged, relentless negativity has literally stripped him of the ability to easily express emotion.
Wow. Let's talk about the biology of that for a second, because this isn't just a metaphor, is it? When a child is constantly failing, their brain is interpreting that as a literal threat, right?
Absolutely. It's a physiological response. When a child is yelled at every time they get a math problem wrong, their amygdala, that's the brain's threat detection center, fires off.
It sounds the alarm.
Exactly. Their body floods with cortisol. They are in a constant state of fight or flight.
But I mean, an 8-year-old can't fight a teacher, and they can't flee a classroom.
Right, they're trapped. So the nervous system defaults to the third survival strategy, freeze.
Ah, freeze. That explains the numbness.
Yes, numbness becomes a biological imperative. Feeling anything at all becomes simply too dangerous for their nervous system to handle.
So the silence is a shield, a heavy, suffocating shield. But the framework says there is a layer even deeper than the numbness, doesn't it?
It does. And that brings us to the deep layer. This is the most dangerous territory.
What's down there?
This is the solidified cognitive belief. After 4 years of failure, criticism, and mockery, Xiao Yu doesn't just feel bad in the moment. He has integrated a core belief about his own identity.
He's internalized it completely.
He truly, deeply believes, I am inherently incapable. I am a broken person. Wherever I go, in whatever I do, I will be looked down upon.
Oh, that is devastating.
It is. It is no longer about math homework or reading comprehension. It is a fundamental conviction of his own worthlessness.
You know, thinking about those 3 layers, it makes me think of a multi-car pileup on a highway.
Oh, that's a great analogy. How so?
Well, you see the car at the very front. That's a kid refusing to do the work, the surface layer. And the adults are standing on the side of the road screaming at the driver, just hit the gas, move forward, you're holding up traffic.
Right. Just do your homework.
Exactly. But what they refuse to acknowledge is the massive backlog of twisted metal, shattered glass, and wreckage piled up behind that car. It's physically pinning it in place.
Middle and deep layers.
Yeah. You can't just tell the kid to accelerate. They are anchored down by years of accumulated psychological trauma.
I'm going to borrow that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it maps perfectly onto what the 2026 sources call the pressure chain.
The pressure chain. Okay, break that down for me.
Old Chen maps this chain out meticulously for Zhao Yu to show how that wreckage accumulated. It is vital to understand the causality here.
Because it didn't just happen overnight.
Exactly. The pileup didn't start with him putting his head on the desk in 4th grade. It started with something incredibly mundane, falling slightly behind in 1st grade pinyin or basic edition.
Just a normal, everyday developmental delay, which happens to thousands of kids.
Right. But then the first car crashes. That slight delay triggers a first link in the chain teacher criticism.
The teacher singles them out.
Yeah. The teacher is stressed, needs to keep the pacing of the curriculum moving, and singles Xiao Yu out. Maybe it's a loud sigh, maybe it's keeping him in from recess. The message is sent, you are a burden to this classroom.
And the chain reaction begins. Because the teacher eventually calls the parents.
Now we have the second link. Parents scolding. The parents are anxious. They are terrified their child will fall behind permanently and ruin their future.
Which is a valid fear, but the reaction is where it goes wrong.
Right. They bring the academic pressure home. The home is no longer a safe haven where the child can decompress. It becomes a secondary classroom where the punishments are even harsher.
And the emotional stakes are tied to parental love. That's a heavy burden for a kid.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then comes the most brutal link for a child's social development. Peer mockery.
Kids can be so cruel.
They can, but children are also incredibly perceptive. They take their behavioral cues from authority figures.
Yeah. So if a teacher treats him like a burden?
Exactly. If the teacher treats Xiao Yu as a slow burden and the parents treat him as a failure, the peers will naturally treat him as an outcast.
They laugh when he reads out loud. They refuse to pick him for group projects.
So the chain is solidified. Early academic struggle leads to teacher criticism, which leads to parent scolding, which leads to peer mockery.
And the sources emphasize that the longer this chain gets and the more years it is allowed to rust and harden, the harder it is to break.
Yes, the wreckage just piles up.
So if we are looking at this massive pileup and this deeply ingrained belief of worthlessness, how on earth do you begin to pry that wreckage apart?
It seems impossible, right?
It does, because the instinct is to get a tutor and aggressively attack the academic deficit. He's behind in math, let's do more math.
But the actionable takeaway from old Chen's observations is almost entirely counterintuitive to traditional education. You have to stop focusing on the academic pileup altogether.
Wait, entirely stop focusing on academics.
Entirely. The absolute first step is the urgent need to find non-academic bright spots.
Bright spots. Okay, define what that means in this context. What is a bright spot?
A bright spot is any activity, no matter how small, where the child feels a genuine sense of agency, competence, and safety.
Okay, so like what? Give me some examples from the text.
In the sources, it mentions things like a child demonstrating incredible patience while caring for a stray animal, or an intricate, obsessive ability to build complex structures with blocks.
So just hobbies, basically.
Well, for a healthy kid, sure, they're hobbies. But for a child like Xiao Yu, whose entire identity has been eroded by academic failure, these bright spots are the only remaining handles for their self-identity.
Ah, I see. It's a lifeline.
Exactly. If his deep layer cognition is telling him, I am stupid and worthless, but he knows he can build a magnificent, structurally sound Lego castle, that Lego castle is a psychological lifeline.
It is tangible proof that his core negative belief is not 100% true.
That is the crucial pivot. It completely shifts the immediate goal. We aren't trying to make him a better math student right now. We are desperately trying to remind him that he is a capable human being.
That makes so much sense. But it requires the adults to fundamentally change their lens, doesn't it?
It's a massive shift for parents. They have to truly see those bright spots as inherently valuable, not just as annoying distractions keeping him away from his homework.
And I can hear the pushback from our listeners right now.
Oh, the pushback is intense.
Right, because if you're a terrified parent, you are listening to us talk about deep cognitive layers and Lego castles, and you're thinking, okay, I see the pain, but if I drop the labels, if I stop enforcing discipline, if I just let him play with blocks, aren't I just letting him get away with bad behavior?
Or am I enabling his avoidance?
Exactly. What is the practical point of this empathy if it doesn't eventually get the homework done and get his grades up?
That pushback comes from a place of intense, genuine fear for the child's future. Adults believe that if they surrender control of the academic situation, the child will ruin their life.
Which is a terrifying thought for any parent.
But this is where we have to clarify the defining distinction of the 2026 consensus. The avoidance, the defiance, the blank stares, these are just the results. They are symptoms of the underlying disease.
And the root disease is the negative cognition.
Precisely. So we are treating the wrong thing entirely when we just focus on the homework. Treating the result with discipline is like a doctor seeing a patient with a raging 104-degree fever caused by a severe bacterial infection.
Okay.
And deciding the solution is to throw the patient into an ice bath and yell at them to stop being hot.
Oh, wow. I mean, it might temporarily lower the surface temperature, sure, but the patient goes into shock and the bacteria continues to multiply.
Exactly. The disease remains untreated. In psychology, we see this ice bath approach play out as what the sources call the last straw effect.
The last straw effect, that sounds ominous.
It is a critical concept in Old Chen's notes. When a child is teetering on the edge of emotional collapse and adults double down on strict discipline or tough love, it doesn't motivate the child to try harder.
It does the exact opposite.
It does the exact opposite. It confirms their deepest, darkest fear.
It confirms the deep layer belief. I really am worthless.
It proves to the child, I knew it. Everyone really does think I'm worthless. Even my own parents just see me as a broken machine that won't produce math homework.
And when that fear is definitively confirmed by the people who are supposed to love them most, what happens?
It triggers total surrender. The child doesn't just give up on the school subject, they give up on the relationship with the adult and they give up on themselves entirely.
Total surrender. That is a chilling phrase.
It breaks the bond of trust permanently.
So the tough love discipline, which the adult genuinely intends as a way to fix the problem, is actually the final hammer blow that shatters the kid's foundation.
Yes. However, the 2026 framework offers a really fascinating, somewhat surprising insight into the function of empathy here.
Okay, tell me about that. Because we usually just think of empathy as a nice thing to do.
Right, we almost always think of empathy as a gift we give to the suffering child. But the sources explore the profound, hidden benefit of deep empathy for the adults.
Wait, empathy as a tool for the adult, how does that work?
Empathy establishes the hard boundaries of intervention. When a parent or teacher finally looks at Xiaoyu, sees the multi-car pileup, understands the paralyzed nervous system.
When they really see what's happening.
Yes. And when they genuinely accept that he cannot do what is being asked of him right now, not that he's refusing to, but that he is psychologically incapable, a massive shift occurs.
What kind of shift?
By facing that stark, ugly reality, the adults are forced to drop their unrealistic expectations.
And dropping those expectations changes the entire atmosphere of the house, doesn't it?
It drastically reduces the toxic friction. Think about the daily battles. The screaming over the kitchen table at 9 p.m. The tears over a single worksheet.
It's exhausting for everyone.
In those moments, the parent is fighting a phantom. They are fighting the idealized version of their child, the child who should be able to do third-grade math.
But that child isn't sitting in front of them.
Exactly. When you accept the reality of the traumatized child actually sitting in front of you, the battle evaporates. You stop demanding that a person with a broken leg run a marathon just to catch up with the rest of the class.
Just stop demanding a marathon from someone with a broken leg, because that daily warfare over the homework is just compounding the fracture.
It's exhausting the parent and destroying the child. It is entirely corrosive.
So what's the alternative? How does dropping the rope actually help?
Here's the key insight. When the adult drops the rope, when they offer a moment of sincere, unconditional acceptance saying, I see you are struggling, and I am not going to yell at you today no matter what, it creates a breathing space for the child.
Let's focus on that term, breathing space. Because I can already hear the critics calling that coddling. You're just letting them off the hook.
It is the furthest thing from coddling. This breathing space is a vital, non-negotiable psychological buffer. It is the only thing that prevents the total mental collapse we talked about earlier.
So it's literally survival.
Yes. Before a child can begin the arduous process of healing and learning again, they must first stop suffocating. Empathy provides the oxygen.
Because you can't learn when you're suffocating.
You cannot learn, you cannot retain new information when you are in a state of chronic fight or flight. Xiao Yu has been holding his breath for 4 years.
Okay, so empathy is established, the adult has dropped the rope, the expectations are lowered, and the child is finally getting some oxygen.
Right. We've stabilized the patient.
But if you're a parent listening to this, you're probably thinking, okay, this empathy is great for stabilizing him, but empathy alone doesn't teach him fractions.
True. Eventually, we have to address the academics.
Exactly. How do we transition from just sitting with him in his pain to actually getting his pencil moving again without triggering another collapse? We need the playbook.
The playbook exists, and it is built around what the text calls the minimum cost principle.
The minimum cost principle. Okay, walk me through it.
This is a radical, controversial departure from traditional tutoring or educational remediation. The core strategy here is abandoning the catch-up.
Wait, abandoning the catch-up, that goes against every single instinct an educator or a parent possesses. The whole panic is based on the fear of falling behind.
I know. But follow the logic of the child's cognitive load. If Xiao Yu is functionally 4 years behind in math, putting a pile of standard 4th grade work in front of him is an act of psychological violence.
Psychological violence.
Yes. He looks at it, he knows instantly that he cannot comprehend it, and the shame cycle restarts immediately. The amygdala fires, the cortisol floods, and he freezes.
So what does the minimum cost principle tell us to do?
It says you must drop the complex tasks. Completely. You retain only the absolute most basic, fundamental learning.
What does that actually look like at the kitchen table, practically speaking?
Practically. It might mean that instead of 2 hours of agonizing homework, he does 10 minutes of basic 1st grade arithmetic that he already knows how to do perfectly well.
Wait, work he already knows, then he's not learning anything new.
Right, but the goal right now is no longer learning new material. That is a secondary concern.
And what is a primary goal?
The primary goal is to stop the daily trauma of feeling like I know absolutely nothing. You want him to sit down, complete a tiny, highly manageable task, and experience the physiological feeling of completion without a panic attack.
Oh, wow. So you are slowly rewiring his brain's association with learning.
Exactly. You are moving it from sheer terror to neutral.
Taking a kid from terror to neutral is a massive life-altering upgrade. I hadn't thought about it like that.
It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. But to maintain that fragile neutral zone, you need baseline environmental rules.
Right, you can't just have chaos around him.
The 2026 framework is incredibly strict about this. You must establish a concrete, ironclad agreement with the parents. During study time, there are non-negotiable rules of engagement.
What are the rules?
No swearing, no yelling, and most importantly, no bringing up past failures.
Oh, bringing up past failures. That is the classic accidental parent trap. If you had just paid attention in class yesterday, we wouldn't be here. Or you always make the same careless mistake.
Every single time an adult uses words like always or never or references yesterday's failure, it immediately triggers the child's deep layer cognition.
The child hears, see, I am inherently bad. My past defines my present.
Exactly. So the learning environment must be ruthlessly sterilized of those historical triggers.
Okay, so we've lowered the bar drastically to 10 minutes of easy math, and we've sterilized the environment of criticism. Let's say it works.
Okay, let's say it works.
He sits down, he does the 10 minutes of math, and he finishes. Our immediate adult instinct is to throw a parade, right? Oh my gosh, you're a genius! Look how smart you are! I knew you could do it.
And if you do that, you will step right into what the source is deeply warned against. The praise trap.
The praise trap. Let's unpack that. Because all the parenting books tell us that praise is supposed to be the ultimate positive reinforcement. How is praise a trap?
In a secure, healthy child with a strong self-concept, generalized praise is reinforcing. But we are not dealing with a healthy child.
Right. We're dealing with Xiao Yu.
In a cynical, burned out, deeply wounded child like Xiao Yu, empty or exaggerated praise is not just useless, it is actively destructive.
Why? Walk me through his thought process when he hears, you're so smart.
Think about his reality. He knows he is far behind his peers. He knows that finishing 10 minutes of easy math isn't genius-level work.
He's not stupid. He knows it's basic.
Right. So when an adult suddenly heaps lavish, generalized praise on him, his internal threat detector goes off. He thinks, they are lying to me, this is a trick, they're just trying to manipulate me into doing more work.
Oh, that makes sense. His cynicism blocks it.
Or, even more tragically, he thinks, they think I'm so pathetic, so broken, that they have to pretend this basic baby-level thing is a massive achievement.
Oh, man. So the praise actually makes him feel more alienated. It feels profoundly patronizing, and it erodes whatever fragile trust you've built.
Exactly. It proves the adult doesn't live in the same reality he does. So the 2026 playbook dictates a very specific alternative. Praise must be hyper-specific and purely objective.
Purely objective. So you don't praise the internal trait.
No, you don't say, you're smart. You acknowledge the visible action.
Give me an example of what I should say instead.
Instead of you are so smart, you say, I noticed you finished those 2 lines of math today without stopping to look out the window. You stayed focused until it was done.
It's just an undeniable statement of fact.
Precisely. The child cannot argue with it. His cynicism can't deflect it because it is objectively true.
And over time, those little objective truths build up.
Yes. Over time, these objective observations build a very small, very sturdy foundation of self-efficacy.
I understand the objective praise, but the outline highlights something else in this intervention section that you are very passionate about. It's labeled as the ultimate red line that adults cross.
Yes. This is the most dangerous, most common mistake well-meaning adults make.
Yeah.
And it completely derails recovery.
What is it?
The ultimate red line is raising your expectations the moment the child shows slight improvement.
Oof, I can feel the wince already because it's such a natural human instinct.
It happens constantly. Let's say Xiao Yu does his 10 minutes of math peacefully for 3 days in a row.
A miracle.
Right. The parent, who has been agonizing over his future for years, is desperate for progress. They see those 3 days and think, great, the method works, he's cured. Let's try 20 minutes today. Let's add a reading assignment.
I can relate to this on a visceral level, but from the perspective of workplace burnout.
Okay, tell me.
Imagine you are completely burned out at your job. You are exhausted, ready to quit. You finally manage to dig deep, rally your energy, and finish a really tough, tedious project that's been hanging over your head.
Right. You just want it done.
You hand it in to your boss, hoping for a breather, maybe a Friday afternoon off to recover. And instead, your boss walks up to your desk, smiles, and says, "Great job getting that done. Since you handled that so efficiently, here are 3 more complex projects due by Monday."
Wow. What happens to your motivation in that exact second?
It dies instantly. You realize that your efficiency and your hard work are just rewarded with more punishment. The prize for digging a hole is a bigger shovel.
The prize for digging a hole is a bigger shovel. That's brilliant. Now multiply that feeling by 1,000 for a fragile child.
It must be devastating.
When parents raise the bar immediately upon seeing a glimmer of progress, they prove to the child that adult goodwill is a trap.
A trap.
The child learns a devastating lesson. If I show them I can do a little bit, they will instantly demand a lot. The only safe strategy to protect myself is to do nothing at all.
Which leads right back to the shutdown.
It leads to a deeper, more profound despair. Because the child's brief moment of hope was weaponized against them.
Adult goodwill is a trap. We have to let them rest in their small victories. We have to let the 10 minutes of math just be 10 minutes of math for a long time.
We must. Which brings us to a harsh, unavoidable reality about time, which the 2026 consensus tackles head-on.
And this transitions us right into the timeline of healing. We have the strategy, minimum cost, objective praise, holding the line on expectations. But we need to manage the clock.
Because parents are panicked.
Exactly. The school year is ticking by. Standardized exams are coming. How long does this actual boots-on-the-ground recovery take? Because society loves a quick fix.
Oh, we love a quick fix.
We are addicted to the movie montage where the troubled kid goes from failing to straight-A student in 3 minutes of screen time with an inspiring soundtrack.
And that illusion of the quick fix is precisely what destroys these kids' chances of actual recovery. The source material features a quote that I believe should be framed on the wall of every therapist, educator, and parent.
What's the quote?
4 years of ice doesn't melt in months.
4 years of ice doesn't melt in months. That is a sobering reality check.
It is both a biological and psychological reality. Xiao Yu's negative cognitive structures, that deep layer belief that he is worthless, took years of repeated trauma, scolding, and failure to solidify.
You can't just undo that overnight.
You simply cannot dismantle them with a few weeks of minimum cost strategies and positive reinforcement. If we push too hard, they break. If we do nothing, they sink.
So the timeline has to be completely redefined.
We are shifting the measurement of progress from weeks and grading periods to years.
So what does that actual multi-year timeline look like? Walk me through the phases of recovery.
The framework breaks it down into very deliberate phases. Let's start with Phase 1, stabilization. This phase lasts anywhere from 1 to 3 months.
1 to 3 months of just stabilization.
Yes. And I cannot stress enough how agonizing this phase is for adults because it feels entirely like doing nothing.
What are the rules for phase 1?
During this period, there's an absolute moratorium on new demands. No extra tutoring on weekends, no grand sweeping lectures about how their current grades will ruin their future career, no nagging about test scores.
None of it.
The only goal is maintaining peace and basic attendance.
How do you even measure success in phase 1? Because parents are going to want metrics. They want to know it's working.
You have to invert your metrics. The metric is the absence of deterioration.
The absence of deterioration.
Success is simply the opposition, the meltdowns, and the truancy aren't increasing. If Xiaoyu gets out of bed, goes to school, sits at his desk, does the bare minimum without having a panic attack, and comes home without a screaming match occurring over dinner,
That's a win.
that is a wildly successful month. You are simply applying a tourniquet. You are stopping the bleeding.
Okay, so we've survived phase 1. The bleeding has stopped. The house is peaceful. What's phase 2?
Phase 2 is called microadjustments. And this phase lasts anywhere from 6 to 12 months.
Wow. An entire school year, basically, just for microadjustment.
Easily. In Phase 2, you introduce the concept of changing one tiny detail at a time in their routine.
Like what kind of detail?
Maybe it's one less scolding per week.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's asking him to do one extra incredibly simple math problem at the end of his 10 minutes. And the golden rule is you make that tiny change and you observe the child closely for 2 full weeks.
Wait, you wait a full 14 days just to see the effect of adding one extra math problem? That requires monastic patience.
It does, but it is necessary.
Okay.
Because you are not observing his academic output, you are observing his nervous system's response. It takes time for the biological stress response to baseline.
Okay, I see.
And this is where the 2 steps forward, 1 step back reality comes into play. If you add that one math problem, and for the next 3 days, Xiaoyu becomes irritable, starts withdrawing again, or resists going to school, you must immediately retreat to the previous phase.
So no forcing it, no saying, come on, Xiaoyu, it's literally just one problem, get over it.
Absolutely not. You must respect the resistance. The resistance is not defiance. It is his brain communicating, I am not feeling safe enough to handle this added pressure yet.
What are the specific warning signs adults should be looking for during these 2 weeks? How do we know we've pushed a microadjustment too far?
The sources outline both physical and psychological markers. You have to pay close attention to somatic symptoms.
Like physical pain.
Yes. A child's body will manifest stress before they can articulate it. Look for unexplained headaches, stomach aches on Sunday nights before the school week begins, or sudden drastic changes in sleep patterns.
And what about psychological signs?
Psychologically, watch for a deepening silence or a sudden resurgence of self-denial, like if he starts muttering things like, I'm stupid anyway again.
The deep layer belief bubbling up again.
If you see those signs, it means stop immediately. You have crossed the threshold of their current resilience.
So the adult really has to become an incredibly tuned-in, deeply observant scientist of their own child's behavior, just like old Chen.
Exactly. And to sustain this over years requires a crucial fundamental shift in the adult's mindset.
Which is?
The goal for these chronic cases like Xiaoyu is never a complete cure in the traditional sense.
Never a complete cure.
The goal is never to magically transform them into a straight-A student who bounds out of bed loving school. The goal, perhaps for the rest of their primary education, is solely to stop the psychological deterioration and help them build enough coping mechanisms to simply survive the educational system.
That is an incredibly tough pill to swallow for a parent. It means officially giving up the dream of the honor roll, the top-tier middle school, the brag-worthy achievements.
It is a profound form of grief for the parents. They have to actively mourn the idealized vision of their child's academic career. But if they don't do that grieving, if they cling to that fantasy, the child will pay the price with their mental health.
And this brings us to a massive looming question, because we've been talking as if we have total control over this process.
Which we definitely don't.
Right. We can design the perfect multi-year psychological timeline. We can implement minimum cost strategies at the kitchen table. We can monitor the somatic symptoms. But we are sending this kid back out into the world. What if the ecosystem around them won't change?
This is the starkest, most uncomfortable reality addressed in the 2026 framework.
Because what if the parents won't stop yelling? Or what if the teacher continues to use humiliation as a motivational tool because that's just how they teach?
You see it all the time.
Yeah, or what if the classmates won't stop teasing? We can build all the buffer we want in a clinical setting or during a private tutoring session, but the kid still has to sit in that specific classroom with those specific people for 8 hours a day. What do we do when the environment is toxic and completely unyielding?
Old Chin's observations are brutally, refreshingly honest here. The fantasy of completely isolating a child from harm is just that, a fantasy. You cannot wrap a child in bubble wrap.
But you also can't just abandon them.
Right, you cannot just throw up your hands and surrender them to the wolves. The framework provides a very clear system of triage for dealing with a hostile environment. It breaks down into 3 layers of intervention for the adults involved.
Okay, let's go through these 3 layers of environmental triage.
Layer 1 is the absolute, non-negotiable bottom line. Block acute harm.
Define acute harm in this context.
Yeah.
What requires immediate intervention?
Acute harm is high-impact overday damage. Public humiliation by a teacher making a child stand in the corner, group bullying or physical abuse by peers, violent plate-throwing, screaming matches at home.
The big stuff.
As an educator, a school counselor, or a supportive family member, you must intervene aggressively here. You cannot change a teacher's underlying pedagogy or personality, but you can go to the principal and say, the public shaming of Zhao Yu violates basic safety protocols and it must stop today.
So you block the bleeding.
You block the bleeding. This is the bare minimum moral requirement for adults.
Okay, so you put a hard stop to the overt cruelty, you block the big hits, but what about the subtle stuff?
That brings us to layer 2, buffer chronic harm.
Because you can't police every rolled eye, every whispered comment, or every disappointed sigh.
Exactly. You can't stop the cold stares from classmates when Zhao Yu gives the wrong answer. You can't always stop an anxious parent from making casual, deeply damaging comparisons over dinner like, look at your cousin's grades, why can't you be like him?
Those comparisons are deadly.
This chronic harm is insidious. It's like a slow poison. So if you can't stop the poison from existing in the environment, you must build a buffer to dilute it.
How do you build a buffer against daily microaggressions?
You create an emotional tree hole.
A tree hole. I love that imagery. It reminds me of those old stories where a character whispers their heaviest secrets into a hollow tree to get them out of their head.
Yes, exactly that. It's a safe, non-judgmental receptacle for their pain. It might be a school counselor, a favorite aunt, a specific teacher who gets it.
Just one safe person.
Someone the child knows they can go to, vent entirely without filter, and know they won't be lectured, corrected, or told to look on the bright side.
What else acts as a buffer?
Additionally, buffering means ensuring a physically isolated space for homework, away from the chaos of a tense household. And critically, it means giving the child permission to opt out of toxic social dynamics. You explicitly tell them, you do not have to be friends with the kids who make you feel bad.
You give them explicit permission to retreat. You validate their right to protect themselves.
Yes. But then we reach layer 3. And I warn you, this is the hardest truth for many caring, proactive adults to accept.
Hit me.
Layer 3 is recognize boundaries.
The boundaries of our own power to fix things.
Yes. The framework is explicit. If you have tried everything, if you have held parent-teacher meetings, offered resources, modeled good behavior, and the parents or the toxic school environment simply will not change, you must stop wasting your energy trying to change them.
I can see a lot of educators feeling like that's giving up on the system.
It's not giving up. It's a strategic reallocation of finite resources. Every ounce of energy you spend fighting an unyielding bureaucratic school environment or arguing with an abusive parent who refuses to listen is energy you are not spending directly on supporting the child.
That makes total sense. You have to focus on the kid.
The tragic reality is some environments remain broken.
So what do you say to the kid? If you're that tree hole person, you can't lie to them and say, don't worry, it'll all be okay. Your teacher really means well. They aren't stupid. They know it won't be okay.
This is one of the most profound points in the entire deep dive. The framework insists on brutal, age-appropriate honesty. You do not make false promises.
No toxic positivity.
You do not try to gaslight the child into thinking a toxic situation is actually fine. If the teacher is cruel, the child knows it. If you lie to protect the teacher's reputation, you lose the child's trust forever.
So what is the script? What do you actually say to an 8-year-old in a bad situation you can't fix?
You sit with them, you look them in the eye, and you validate their reality. You say, "You are right. This environment is really hard. The way they are speaking to you is not fair, and it is hard for us to change them, but I am here. I see what is happening. I'm going to help you hurt a little less, and we're going to survive this together."
Wow, we are going to survive this together. That fundamentally shifts the alliance. You're getting down into the trenches with them, acknowledging that the mud is real rather than shouting advice from the safety of the ridge.
It is the single most powerful thing you can do for a child trapped in a toxic system. You become their anchor to reality, confirming that they aren't crazy or broken for feeling hurt.
But survival, by its nature, is a somewhat passive state. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Because if the environment is flawed, and we as adults can only buffer so much, the child ultimately needs tools to navigate it themselves.
Right. They need to learn self-protection.
But I had a major critique of how resilience is usually taught to kids, and I want to hear the 2026 perspective on this.
Let's hear the critique.
The standard adult advice for a bullied or stressed kid is usually some variation of take a deep breath, just ignore them, or be the bigger person.
Nick, the classics.
But we are talking about Xiao Yu, an 8-year-old whose nervous system is literally on fire. For a kid in panic mode, under extreme pressure from an authority figure telling them to take a deep breath is completely useless advice, isn't it? It feels like we are asking an 8-year-old to have the emotional regulation of a Zen monk who has meditated for 20 years.
Your critique is spot on, and the 2026 consensus strongly validates it. That standard advice, take a deep breath, is often a form of adult abdication.
Adult abdication. Explain that.
We give them a hollow platitude because we are uncomfortable and don't know what else to do. Old Chin's framework completely redefines what self-rescue, or CGU, in the original text, actually means for primary schoolers.
Okay, redefine it for me. If I'm dealing with an 8-year-old, I can't teach them complex Stoic philosophy. Are we just talking about basic physical self-protection here? What does usable self-rescue look like for a broken kid?
It is not about being a tough superhero. It is not about conquering the bullies with a witty comeback. It is fundamentally about basic self-protection, followed by slowly building a mental wall.
A mental wall.
The framework breaks this down into 3 highly accessible levels. Let's start with level 1, behavioral self-protection.
This sounds like literal fight-or-flight management.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
This has the lowest threshold. It requires 0 emotional processing. You teach the child specific physical actions to stop a situation from escalating.
Give me an example.
For example, if a teacher is screaming at them, you teach them to stay completely silent. Do not argue back. Do not try to explain yourself. Just look down, minimize your physical presence, and wait for the storm to pass.
It's playing dead, essentially.
Evolutionarily speaking, yes. It minimizes the predator's attack surface. If peers are mocking them on the playground, you teach them to physically turn their body and walk away. Don't engage. Just remove the physical body from the danger zone.
And what about academically?
Academically, you teach them to peacefully accept when they don't understand a lesson. Rather than spiraling into a panic attack, you teach them the internal script. I don't know this right now, and that's okay. I will just sit here quietly.
It's damage control. You are teaching them how to not make the fire worse.
Yes. Once they master that basic physical damage control, we can move to level 2, emotional buffering. This takes long-term practice.
How does an 8-year-old buffer their emotions? They don't have the vocabulary for it.
By understanding that the stress hormones, the emotion, need somewhere physical to go, otherwise they turn inward and cause depression.
Ah, so it's somatic.
Yes. You teach them to use high-energy sports, rough and tumble play, or talking to that tree hole person to literally flush the stress out of their body. Give them structural physical outlets. And concurrently, the adult must consistently, repeatedly plant a specific cognitive seed.
What's the seed we are planting?
The seed is the idea that other people's opinions are not the whole truth.
That's a really hard concept for a kid. They are wired to view adults, especially teachers and parents, as omniscient gods who know everything.
They do, which is why you don't expect them to believe it immediately. You just plant it, water it, and wait. When the teacher calls them lazy, you quietly say later, The teacher was angry today, but what she said isn't the whole truth about who you are.
Just gently pushing back on the narrative.
Over years, that seed begins to sprout into a small internal shield of skepticism. They start to realize, maybe the teacher's just having a bad day. Maybe I'm not totally worthless.
And cultivating that skepticism leads to the final level.
Yes. Level 3, cognitive bottom line. This is the ultimate psychological shield. This is what we are aiming for over the course of years of minimum cost strategies and empathy.
If the deep layer belief was, I am worthless, what is the new cognitive bottom line?
You instill the deep, unshakable belief that grades are just the result of one specific, highly artificial task. They are a measurement of how well you did on a piece of paper on a Tuesday. They are not a measure of your human worth.
I mean, that flies in the face of everything the modern educational system implicitly tells them every single day.
It does. It is an act of quiet, philosophical rebellion. You teach the child that they deserve basic respect, safety, and love, regardless of their academic performance.
Losing conditional worth.
Even if they are last in the class forever, even if they never master fractions, they have a right to exist in the world without being abused.
If we pull back and look at the broader 2026 paradigm shift mentioned in our source materials, this really illustrates a massive societal movement.
It's a huge pivot.
We are moving away from the obsession with fixing trauma to make a kid normal again, and moving toward fostering resilience.
Precisely. We used to focus so much on trying to undo the damage, trying to accelerate them back to grade level. The 2026 realization is that you can't always undo the damage, and the environment might remain hostile for a long time.
True resilience.
True resilience isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about having that cognitive bottom line to fall back on when things get hard.
But there's a vital caveat here. A child can't just build this bottom line by themselves in the dark, can they? They can't logic their way out of trauma alone.
No. And that is the central beating heart of the entire framework. Children cannot self-rescue in a vacuum. They are biologically wired for connection.
They need us.
They need an adult to be their absolute backstop. They need someone who holds that cognitive bottom line for them, who believes in their worth unconditionally until they are old enough and strong enough to hold it for themselves.
So, how do we define success for Xiaoyu at the end of this journey? If he's still getting bad grades in 6th grade, what does a win actually look like under this new paradigm?
We redefine success entirely. If Xiaoyu goes through his day and does not engage in self-denial, if he doesn't mutter, I'm garbage, when he drops a pencil, that is a massive win.
Wow.
If he does not engage in self-harm, if he can eat a full meal, sleep through the night, play joyfully with his Lego blocks, and live a relatively normal daily life, despite the intense academic pressure around him, the rescue is a success.
He survived.
He survived a system designed to break him with his soul intact.
That is deeply moving, and it completely upends how we measure educational outcomes.
Yeah.
We aren't measuring test scores, we are measuring psychological survival.
It's a humbling, necessary reality for adults to accept.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to synthesize the journey we've been on. The 2026 approach to this crisis of school weariness, this profound Yangtze, isn't about magical cures.
No, not at all.
It's not a motivational seminar designed to trick failing kids into becoming honor roll students. It is about a grounded, gritty, fundamentally human reality. It's about respecting the sheer depth of a child's pain, radically lowering our expectations to meet them where they actually are.
Yes, preventing further deterioration at all costs.
And above all, protecting the child's basic human right to exist without constant crushing shame.
That captures the essence of it beautifully. But before we sign off, I want to pose a final, perhaps slightly uncomfortable thought for everyone listening. An unmentioned thread to mull over as you go about your day.
I always appreciate when you leave us with a challenge. Lay it on us.
We've spent this entire time talking about how to protect a child from the crushing weight of academic expectations. We've talked about the necessity of separating their inherent worth from their performance.
Right.
But I want you to turn that lens inward. Ask yourself, if we strip away a child's grades, if we strip away their achievements, their extracurricular trophies, their compliance with our rules, what is actually left of your view of them?
That's a heavy question.
Furthermore, are you prepared to truly value a child, or even yourself for that matter, purely for existing? Are you capable of offering love and respect without requiring the shield of success to justify that existence?
Wow. That brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? To Xiaoyu, sitting in that brightly lit classroom, staring down at his desk, waiting for someone to just see him and not the missing homework.
Exactly.
It's not about fixing the child to fit the machine. It's about putting the machine away and looking at the human being in front of you.
Perfectly said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 2026 frontier of child psychology. We hope you carry this empathy and these hard questions forward into your own lives.